Hello and welcome to day 7 and 8 of the Recruiting Management New Hire Product Training. In this video, we're going to focus on the application template. Here is the agenda. So we'll begin by looking at the application template. We'll move on then to look at the field IDs and different field types and the forward intact equals true attribute. So the application template can be accessed via provisioning or also in Admin Center Managed Template. It's important to remember that customers can configure multiple application templates. This is also similar to the job requisition where we have more than one template. This allows the customers to configure different templates or different fields for various different business cases. In contradiction to that, when we talk about the candidate profile template, it's really important to remember that there is only one candidate profile template. Also, there's a note here on the slides that recommends that we always create 2 copies of the XML file. So if you are downloading an application template, you should take 2 copies of this to your downloads folder and save one as a backup. This means if you're testing in your sales demo and you make some changes such as editing a field, you can revert to the clean copy of the template if you need to revert any changes. So we'll take a look at the XML template. I'll begin by showing you in provisioning where to download it. So if we go into our browser and we go to provisioning, I'm here in my sales demo company instance. I'm going to look for the word application. And down here we see edit job requisition application template. If we click here, we'll see that in my system, I only actually have one application template, but if you're in a customer's instance, there could be several different templates. We can just click the export hit button here to download that template. I have the template open here in Notepad++, and we can start at the very beginning of the document. You'll notice a template name and a template description as well. So the template name is really important, and we can check the definition from the slides. So this is the unique ID of the XML template. If this template name changes when you're uploading the template, this will create a new application template. What this means is that if, for example, you change the template name on upload, the system will go, oh, there are no other templates in the system with this same name, so I will create a brand new template. So it's really important that you do not change the template name. If you want to modify the exact same template, just make sure you do not change the name. But you are able to make some changes to things like the labels or the translations. I'll just show you the translations. So here we have the template name is Next Gen Candidate Detail Info Template. And underneath here we have various translation labels. So for German, Spanish, or French, etc., we can change these translations in the system. We also have a description here of this is the candidate detail page. So again, that description is just an overview or to give some insight in this XML file of what this template is. It doesn't really serve any purpose, it's just the description. So next we'll look at the field definitions. So the field definition elements in the job application XML template define the fields on the job application record. So when we already looked at candidate profile or job requisition, we're going to see a very similar XML syntax. And we're going to see some of the same attributes again, such as ID, type, required, and custom. And it's always important to remember that the field ID must be unique within the application template. So you cannot have 2 fields with the same ID in the same template. There are some additional attributes such as public, read-only, and forward intact. These will be explained later in the deck. And we're also going to see default labels and translation labels and field descriptions. So this is an example of a field definition. If we check the ID, we can see that the field ID is first name. Its type text and its required false. So field type defines what type of data will be stored. In this case, it's text. Required equals false. This is showing that this field is not a mandatory field. A mandatory field or a required field will show with an asterisk beside it on the application page. We see custom equals false, so this is a standard field, meaning the standard field first name here is being used, and the type text, these 2 must be coming from the implementation guide. If you're using a standard field, you must always use the associated field type for that field. And we have public equals true, meaning the field is visible, and we'll talk about this later in some other videos when we talk about overrides. Read only is equal to false. Again, this is a legacy attribute, and we'll touch on that later. Anonymized true, and this is in relation to purging or anonymization of applications. Forward intact equals true. This is when we are forwarding the application to another requisition with the data be forwarded intact, and sensitive equals false. So let's just take a look at some of the definitions for those attributes. Some of them we've already explained. So field ID, make sure this field ID is unique within the job application XML template. So this is the name of the field ID. Type, this defines the data that the system accepts or stores in this field. So we'll see different types of fields. So for example, we'll have text, number, percentage, percent, pick list, things like that. Required, this attribute defines whether a field is required for an application record to be completed. So this is either true or false, and this is whether or not the field is mandatory and needs to have a value. Custom denotes whether a field is a standard field or a custom field. Again, the values here are either true and false. If you're using a standard field ID, you must have the corresponding field type from the implementation guide. Public. So again, this is either true or false, and this controls whether or not the field is publicly visible. Public attribute is used with overrides, and this is used then to control whether or not a field is public equals true or public equals false based on the job requisition country. Read only, this is a legacy attribute. So this is something that's no longer used, and in new configurations we always set this attribute to false. This attribute was replaced by read and write permissions, so we can more or less ignore this read only attribute, but just remember that it should be set to false in new implementations of the product. Anonymize, this again is either true or false. It identifies whether a given field is considered to contain personally identifiable information, and that means it must be purged from the system. So this is used in conjunction with data retention management. So for example, if there's a field called first name or something like address or contact phone number, this is all data which could be considered personally identifiable, meaning if you have someone's phone number, you can identify who that person is by their phone number. It's unique. So when we're removing data from the system, we need to have these values set as anonymized equals true, so that when we delete a candidate profile or an application, in this case, that we anonymize that data and it's removed from the system. Forward intact. If forwarding an application to another job requisition, the data will remain intact and be populated on the new the new application. So again, allowable values here are either true or false, and what that simply means that, for example, maybe you have an attachment field and it's called please upload your driving license. If we're forwarding an application to a different job, and maybe this job is also for a delivery driver, well then we need to make sure that we forward the driver license document with it. So when we're forwarding the application from job rec A to job rec B, the attachment could be considered forward intact equals true, so it will bring the value with it to the new requisition, meaning the candidate does not need to re-upload it. Field label, so this controls the appearance of the field name. So in that same example, the field may be called driver's license, but the field label could be called please upload your driver's license. So this is how the field displays in the UI, and we can add different translation labels for different languages. MIME type. So this refers to the use of HTML. So you can see here text plain just refers to unformatted plain text, but we can use a MIME type text HTML. So this just means that if a customer is putting in some instruction headers maybe into their application form, they can maybe create some paragraphs or tables using HTML code. They might be able to add some styling and maybe some different colors of fonts, things like that. So we do support HTML, but only when MIME type HTML is used. Standard fields and corresponding field types. So I've mentioned this already. If a field is defined as custom equals false, this means it's a standard field. Here we have a list this is from the implementation guide of all the standard field IDs from the application template. We'll see here the field types. So for example, the standard field resume must be type rich text. Candidate's first name must be type text. Gender must be a pick list. So it's important when we're using any standard fields that we're checking the guide for the correct field type. Here we have some of the definitions of what field types are. So text, for example, is a single line of alphanumeric text with a 100 character limit. Similar to this, we have something called a text area. It's simply a larger text box. So this allows for multiple lines of alphanumeric text. So this has a 256 character limit. We see some other fields there, maybe like date. So this is a date manually entered by the user. It can be displayed as well in a calendar picker. So you have a calendar icon where you can select the date. Number, we have a number value. Percent is a percentage value with one decimal place. And we also see things like some document fields such as multi-attachment and multi-attachment selection.